Welcome to meeting number 25 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Pursuant to the order adopted by the House on Wednesday, January the 28th, 2026, the committee is commencing its study of Bill C-225, an act to amend the Criminal Code. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders, and members are attending here in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. A few comments for the benefit of members and witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you before speaking. For those on the video conference, you can choose the language of choice at the bottom. Those in the room, you can do the same on your machines. All comments should be addressed through the chair, and I'll signal everyone with a yellow card when there's 1 minute left, and the red card when there's 30 seconds left, and then I will ever so gently cut you off. So before we begin, I want to provide a trigger warning. We will be discussing experiences related to intimate partner violence. This may be triggering to viewers with similar experiences. If any participants feel distressed or need help, please advise the clerk. And for all witnesses and all members of Parliament, let's recognize that these are very difficult discussions, and let's try to be compassionate in our conversations. For the first hour, I want to welcome Frank Caputo, Member of Parliament for Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola, and the sponsor of C-225. It's appropriate that this bill is coming to this committee since we are the ones that asked for legislation of this kind. Welcome, and I will yield the floor to you for your opening statement of 5 minutes, and then we'll proceed to rounds of questions. Please go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Pour commencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To start, I wanted to tell you thank you. Thank you to my colleagues.
How this bill come to the status of women? For those watching or for those who may not be aware, this was initially referred to the Justice Committee, and it is my honor to be here with you. There's a few people I want to recognize here today, some of whom are present. I want to start with some prominent members of Bailey McCourt's family who inspired parts of this bill. Her mom, Karen, her dad, Shane, her stepmom, Trish, her Aunt Debbie, present here today, and the other victim who survived but with significant injuries, Carrie. Told her that we would be doing this today. She and I were exchanging text messages, so through you, Madam Chair, I say to Carrie, we wish you an ongoing recovery. I can't imagine the trauma that you are enduring. Sometimes there are victims beyond just the intimate partners, whether it be a bystander, like in this case, a friend, or even the community, children who have to see the repercussions that reverberate both physically and emotionally. Also want to introduce Flo Bellman, Paul Henderson, also here today, who shared their story with me. I believe I was in a Cal Tire as I was getting my tires changed. It was a Saturday, and I had to step into the corner because I was going to be shedding some tears. Countless others have told me their stories. I can't name them all, sometimes due to confidentiality and privacy, but just due to time constraints. I can't tell you, as a committee, Madam Chair, and others, how many people have contacted me to say thank you. And this isn't me, this is us. One anecdote that I will relate is, oftentimes we have intimate partner violence often centers on women. It's predominantly an offense that impacts women. But when I spoke earlier about the reverberation, I recently had a young man, probably 19 years old, come and literally start crying on my shoulder because of what his mom had gone through. So this is a highly relevant bill, in my view, a bipartisan bill, and I thank everyone who's helped us get it here. Thank Kelly Favreau she's one person that comes to mind. We come from different sides of the political spectrum, and yet she has been unrelenting in her advocacy. If you want to see somebody whose advocacy moves mountains, who's not afraid to call us all out and say, you need to do this, who herself is a survivor of sexual violence that she has shared with us as parliamentarians. Thank you, Kelly, and all those with you who have helped. I want to remember Angel Fair. That name probably doesn't ring a bell to most people, but that is the last homicide I prosecuted where the victim was as a result of intimate partner violence. Angel was I believe she was in her about early 30s, I want to say, and her intimate partner killed her and literally put her in a barrel of cement. And it was the undercover police. It was an undercover police operation that yielded that. I thank the police officers for that. My heart goes out to Angel. Her abuser, her killer, is now on parole. I meant to go into the history of the bill, and I'll do that very quickly, Madam Chair. But this bill is a bill I wrote in the 44th Parliament that I just didn't table. Over the summer, we saw the tragic killing of Bailey McCourt. The substance of the bill was present, but I updated it to include a provision that there should be a presumption of first-degree murder when somebody kills their intimate. The time has come for this type of provision. For far too long, like many sex offenses against children, intimate partner violence has percolated below the surface, with society being seemingly afraid to talk about it. We're not afraid anymore. Now is the time. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Caputo. Now we'll go into our first round of questions, and we will begin with Madame Vien, 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Caputo, Frank, thank you for being here with us today. We're very happy that you have chosen to table Bill C-225 at this committee, because this committee is hyperactive, very, very active, and holds out a lot of studies concerning women's safety. And we try to understand socioeconomical contexts and political contexts which make it that women often find themselves in very difficult situations, sometimes with no possibilities, such as these women who were murdered in Canada. I don't know the figure. There are about 200 women who've been murdered in Canada in 2025. There's one Canadian woman who's killed every 48 hours in Canada. I got this from the Government of Canada website. In Quebec, since the beginning of the year, 6 films have been murdered, possibly femicides. So things are not going very well in terms of women's safety in the country. Does this context, Mr. Caputo, is this what guided you in the creation of this bill? Will C-225 come and help women to live in safety? Thank you for your question. It's a very important question.
Opening remarks was that this is an issue that has been below the surface. My former career, which you've probably all heard far too often, was as a prosecutor, but I was also a parole officer before that, where I dealt with federal offenders who were serving sentences of 2 years or more. And I can tell you that intimate partner violence, when it was present on a file, it was so different than other parts of violence. You know, you say the context that motivates this. There's something about intimate partner violence because there is a dependence. You often, typically, sleep next to the person. People are often intimate with the person. They share bank accounts. They know all of their fragilities. Anybody who's been in a long-term relationship here knows that their partner will know exactly what is difficult, what pushes their buttons, and things like that. And these types of offenses are therefore marked oftentimes, when they are abusive, with significant manipulation, with dependence, things of that nature. When I was a prosecutor, I would say we would have oftentimes one victim a day who would come to our counter at the Crown Counsel office and say, I want to drop charges. And it's okay to want justice. That's what we have to say to victims. This is something for me in the context that I've just seen far too much. And frankly, I've just had enough with standing on the sidelines as a legislator to let this offense go by without further discussion.
C'est tout à votre honneur, puis c'est tout à l'honneur du Parlement parce que
It's really all for your honor and the honor of Parliament, because I think this is a bill which will receive the support of all parliamentarians. A more technical question for the prosecutor that you are. Some people may be concerned that because the murder of a intimate partner becomes first-degree murder, that removes defense possibilities for the other party. What do you tell those people? For example, a woman who is legitimately defending herself, who might kill her partner, and she might be considered to have to be a first-degree murderer. Will there be room for nuances? How should we understand this? Because we're not jurists here. Thank you, Ms. Vian.
Nuances, but this is what I'll say. Putting aside pre-trial and things like that, criminal cases have two elements, generally. Well, three, I suppose. You have pre-trial, which is disclosure and things like that. You receive the documents and any applications. Then you have the trial. That is where you decide innocence or guilt. So when you talk about first-degree murder for somebody who's innocent, well, if you're innocent, then you will not be convicted of first-degree murder. The issue of whether or not it is a second-degree murder, which happens when you are convicted of murder, it's either first or second. Right now it would be second. That is an issue of sentencing. It is not an issue of conviction. So we are strictly here saying when you kill an intimate, the sentencing that kicks in, not at the trial level, would be with respect to first-degree murder. I understand that there are concerns around this. My view is that we should address those concerns. If innocent people, if innocent women are going to jail, I don't think it's right that they go to jail under second-degree murder, as it is right now. And I think every single person in this room should be outraged if that is the case. So we have to address that if that is a concern. Thank you.
Very good. And now we'll go to Ms. Nathan for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Thank you, Mr. Caputo, for bringing forward this important legislation and working closely with families and survivors. Regardless of what party we represent, there are issues that should not divide us, and I'm glad that we agree on this, and that's why we're all here today. This is an important bill. This bill would automatically classify all murders of an intimate partner as first-degree murder. Mr. Caputo, we've heard concerns from several experts and frontline organizations, including shelters, supporting women fleeing domestic violence, like Barbara Schreifer Clinic, commemorative clinics, and the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund, that approach could unintentionally capture situations where a woman kills her abusive partner while acting in self-defense. Would you be open to amending the bill so that first-degree murder would apply specifically in cases where the accused engaged in a pattern of coercive or controlling behavior towards their partner, as we know victims don't engage that way? This could help ensure the law targets abuses while protecting survivors. Sometimes women's advocacy organizations have called for this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I think, and I speak through you, Madam Chair, when I answer these questions, and thank you, MP Nathan, for your question. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Well, I'll answer the crux of the question. Yes, I am more than open to amendments, and I'll be very candid. These amendments have been discussed with the Minister of Justice firsthand, as in he and I have had face-to-face conversations about this. For those people outside of the parliamentary bubble, all they see on TV sometimes is question period when we're really going at it and things like that. To anybody watching home, we actually generally get along. And a lot of the time we'll have to put our differences aside on issues or major issues, but this is an issue that unifies us. So I've spoken at length with the Minister of Justice, and I do thank him for speaking with me, and I thank his staff. So those amendments, I think, will come, and they will come to this committee. With respect to the issue of unintentional incarceration, I do not want to see a battered spouse in self-defense serve a day in jail if they are not guilty. It cannot be much more clear than that. So under the current regime, let's say this bill never passes. The current regime is, if you were talking about unintentionally capturing people, they are still liable to murder if they are unintentionally captured. Does that make sense? It's just second-degree murder. Second-degree murder holds a life sentence. So if the issue is we are unintentionally capturing people for first-degree murder, and I put this to the committee, are we okay with unintentionally capturing people within second-degree murder when the person is innocent? I mean, this is something that's been expressed to me, and it's something I lose sleep over, frankly. If somebody's innocent, they shouldn't be found guilty of second-degree murder. When I went through law school, we were taught a case called Lavallee. Very prominent case of an intimate partner who was acquitted based on her psychological, based on what had occurred and her perception of a threat, though even if somebody might say, well, that threat wasn't immediate, the cycle of violence that we so often see. So that would be my answer to both of those elements you asked. Thank you.
Thank you. I also wanted to find out why, I'm sure you know it's widely understood that providing self-defense can be very challenging at court. So particularly in intimate partner violence situations where survivors often do not report abuse because of manipulation from their partners. Can you speak a little bit about that? I know you have experience working in the courts.
Yes, thank you. Self-defense is an offense which the Crown must disprove. Sometimes the accused has to raise self-defense or has to raise a defense. I'm not talking about self-defense. Sorry to be confusing. But self-defense, if it appears on the facts, the Crown has to disprove it. What I think we need to do is create a culture in which people are not afraid to come forward, where they are not afraid to avail themselves to the victim services that are available, to avail themselves to whatever support is present. I'll say it for the third time. Somebody who has a valid defense in the form of self-defense is not legally guilty. They should not be legally found guilty if they acted in self-defense. And I hope I'm being very clear on this, because this is something I don't want to conflate first-degree murder with an acquittal. If somebody acts in self-defense, legally, they are entitled generally to an acquittal. I'm trying to think of it. This is for people who, at the trial level, have not been found to have acted in self-defense and have done so and have murdered their intimate partner. Thank you.
Alors, Madame Larouche, vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes.
Madame Larouche, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you for being with us. It's also very, very special today that we will be having the family of victims in this committee room. So we know how difficult this is, and we offer our condolences and our sympathy I see that people are very emotional in this room, and we're with you with our whole hearts. It's a subject that's very sensitive, and we can see it with the emotion that we're feeling in this room. And we're all there, and we have a role to play to question things. That's our role in this democracy, to see how we can improve the bill. That's part of the process. So I will be asking my questions in a very constructive state of mind, and take it as something positive, Mr. Caputo. So I'll go ahead now. For example, a question I could ask you to know a bit more about what inspired this bill. Did you, in the context of your consultations, consult Quebec groups who are specified in domestic violence? Have you discussed with shelters and specialized tribunals on sexual and domestic violence? Because we have these specialized tribunals in Quebec after the report of rebuilding trust, a report that was created in the spirit of a non-partisan committee, transpartisan, if you want to call it that. Have you had that particular approach with the Quebec model? To start.
For hitting it. Merci pour votre...
Merci. Thank you for your comment and your words.
I had to say at the beginning, and I do believe that we are here, Madame LaRouche, in a constructive environment to make what may be a good bill better, and to make what may be a very good bill the best. So thank you for your comments. I will be very candid. Being from British Columbia and having practiced common law rather than civil law, I'm not as familiar with the tribunals that you mentioned. What I would love to do, perhaps with you, perhaps with someone else, is I would think it would be a very good use of my time to take some of those resources, peut-être avec Madame Vien, and we can go
maybe with Madame Vien,
these things firsthand. You know, the inspiration, I believe you asked what was kind of some of the inspiration for this bill. One of the things that really bothered me is that right now, what this bill does is it creates we've been focusing on the murder element. Right now, what the offense of assault, if you assault an intimate partner, it is the exact same charge as punching somebody at the bar. So the law right now doesn't distinguish between assaulting somebody that is in a relationship of trust, in a relationship of dependence, and in a relationship of shared finances. I believe that's wrong, and I believe that people, frankly, if they beat their spouse, that's how their criminal record should read. So that was a primary inspiration. It's some conversation I've had with lawyers, some judges even. That was something I hadn't touched on. I'm sorry if I went on too long there.
Non, il n'y a pas de problème. Ça explique un peu plus.
No problem. It also explains the research and the impact evaluation that you base yourself on to bring these amendments to the criminal code. So I understand that better. Would you be ready to consider the addition of an additional provision to prevent about women who are subject to prolonged abuse?
I just had to catch up with the translation there. Thank you. One day I will hopefully converse with you en français fluently. I am open to any amendments that will make this bill well. I've spoken earlier about the fact that there are amendments in principle. That's no secret. I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag there. And there's a general agreement as to those amendments that I would be supportive of with the government. My plan would be to sit down with you, Madame LaRouche, go through those amendments, and hopefully we can have unanimity on those amendments, and perhaps you will have amendments that we haven't yet considered that we can then take to the government and we can look at. As I say, we want to get this bill done, but I want the best possible bill to come from committee. Thank you.
Trente secondes.
30 seconds. There are experts who say that the increase in sentences has not been a disincentive in terms of domestic violence. Why correct the consequences rather than improve prevention? What would you say to those experts? That's a good question.
If you look at sentences based on a number of factors, denunciation and deterrence are two of those factors. To denounce is to say, we don't agree with this conduct. To deter it is to say to other people, don't do this. Frankly, this has just gone on far too long. And a lot of people have made the argument, and I taught a sentencing class at our local law school. I know I'm short on time, but I think this is an important question. A lot of people have made the argument, well, sentences or length of sentences don't necessarily deter crime. But when you take the life of an intimate, I think we have to recognize how much of a problem this is. And one of the ways that we do that as parliamentarians, who are the ones responsible for setting sentencing, is to say this offense is so repugnant in the eyes of parliamentarians that we will denounce it by saying you will spend longer in jail. It's that simple.
Thank you. All right, now we'll go to a second round of questions with Ms. Cody for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you, Mr. Caputo, for coming today. I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done with this bill. I know you've invested a great deal of work and personal commitment to this. So I just want to ask, in your view, what provision within this bill will have the greatest impact and why?
Thank you, Ms. Cody. I appreciate the question. You know, that remains to be seen. You know, one of the things that doesn't get discussed about this bill is the provision that you would have to go before a peace officer if convicted of a crime within 5 years against an intimate. Go before a judge. I said peace officer, didn't I? So normally what happens, this is my experience, somebody else might have a different experience, is that a person commits an offense. If the police are called, they're arrested for that offense. They're put in handcuffs. They might be taken to the detachment. They might just actually sit in the back of a police car. And they're then released by the police officer on conditions. They're literally released from custody. Handcuffs are removed. Go on your way. Here's your court date. Here are your conditions. Okay? That happens almost always. Now, what I would like to do, and part of the reason that we're renaming this assault of intimate partner, is to reflect that you have previously abused an intimate partner. You have previously harassed an intimate partner. So somebody looking at your criminal record can say, you know what? Rather than just saying this person is an assaulter, no, they are somebody who abuses their partners. So the fact that the alleged abuser would have to go before the judge, that is actually considered much more serious in terms of a release than being released by a police officer. In fact, peace officers cannot impose the same conditions on release that judges can. So it's very important to recognize that. In fact, police actually appreciate this too, because the system isn't built to bring a lot of people into custody. We've talked a lot about Bill C-75, and there is common law as well that says a person should be released at the earliest opportunity on the least onerous conditions. Well, if you've previously abused your spouse, I disagree. You should go before a judge, and the judge should make that call. A lot of police officers appreciate that because they might say, you know, the law isn't necessarily on my side. You have this law on bail that says release right away, but the law gives us a backdrop of safety through this bail provision that you have to go before a judge. I think that's actually a very important provision that in this bill has not, made the headlines, so to speak.
Also, as we've heard here, it's really grown. Intimate partner violence, a woman is killed every 48 hours. And you mentioned that there are some things that keep you up at night. But what does Bill C-225 mean to you? And what more would you like to add to the record about it?
Walking on the green carpet of the House of Commons has been one of the greatest honors of my life, right up there with getting married and having children. with it being beneath those. But it's up there. So the ability to not only do that, but with Bill C-291, which I authored last Parliament, and it passed under the name of MP Arnold, to change the name of child pornography and sexual abuse material to child sexual abuse and exploitation material. That's something I'll never forget. That to me is something I stood on doorsteps and said I would change. The honor to sit here is one thing, but the ability to exercise that honor to pass meaningful changes, I can't put words on it. You know, when you get stopped on the street and people just stop you, people you've never met, they say, well, you look like Frank Caputo. Yes, I'm Frank. I just want to thank you. Or people you've passed before but never said hi to and say, you know what? I was a victim of intimate partner violence and I just want to say thanks. And they just say, have a good day. Giving voices to the voiceless, names to the nameless, faces to the faceless, I think that's something we should all do. The fact that I have the ability to put my name to a piece of legislation that does that, it's something that will stay with me beyond my parliamentary career, and I am so proud of that.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Ms. Wen for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's nice to see the great folks at the Status of Women Committee today. I apologize that I'm having to dial in virtually, but I just want to thank everyone for joining in this really important conversation. MP Caputo, thanks for your leadership here. Truly, we all know how pervasive the challenges around gender violence have been, continue to be. Feminists have been talking about this for decades. I remember being 13 and handed a rape whistle and being told that, you know, my job as a woman was to be thinking about my safety. And so it is work on behalf of all Canadians to make sure that we are sending the right signals, that we are reforming our justice system to address the challenges and the epidemic of violence that we see that many women and girls and families experience. And truly, it's a privilege to get to ask you some questions today about this legislation. I also want to thank the family members who are here today to bear witness and be part of this conversation. It's really critical. So thank you for that as well. I wanted to ask, you know, I'm thinking about your legislation alongside C14, C16. There's some elements in what we're trying to introduce. If we think about the story, about the full suite of changes that we may be able to bring forward and advance in terms of, you know, this concept of course of control, which is it's some work that we're trying to make sure that we have a space to introduce through some of the new legislation. I'm wondering if you could reflect on the place of potentially criminalizing coercive control in order to prevent homicides of intimate partners, and where you think that might fit into the spectrum, and how this might support some of the efforts you want to see in terms of changes.
Well, thank you very much, MP Nguyen. We've had a chance to speak together, and it's an honor to share this platform with you as well. Coercive control, I believe, is something that, if memory serves, passed unanimously in the last Parliament. And I want to be really clear here for anybody who has questions about what coercive control means. To criminalize conduct, we're not talking about everyday things, disagreements, things like that. Coercive control is so pronounced that it leaves a partner, and I'm not quoting from the code here, please don't take me for saying that, I'm just giving you my example, my experience. It is so pronounced in terms of control of everything, who you can see, who you can't see, who you could be friends with, what you can eat, what you can wear, where you can spend your money. No, this isn't just a matter of people having arguments over everyday things. I mean, I don't know a single couple who's never argued or never disagreed. That's commonplace in relationships. Coercive control, if I can define it in a way, and I'm sorry, this is going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I really want to address this. When I was prosecutor, I mostly focused on internet offenses against kids, but I did deal with a great amount of intimate partner violence. And every year there were one or two cases, And it was just, they were different. There was just something different about these cases where the nature of the manipulation, the nature of the coercive control, I'm talking about stealing passwords for somebody's social media page and then changing all the passwords and posting all sorts of embarrassing content. Stuff where people might go, well, that's not quite criminal. But you know what? I think it is. But you know what? There's just something different to give a message to the partner or former partner, I've got this, or I've got control. That is coercive control, and that itself, I believe, should be criminalized, because I am trying to think of a homicide of an intimate that did not involve an element of coercive control. I think I've been unequivocal in what I've said here about coercive control. It goes hand in hand with intimate partner violence. It really does. But I don't know that we as legislators have maybe caught up with the research and also caught up with the vernacular of how do we classify this. It was just like the same thing with when we use the term child pornography. Just because we've used that term for a long time, just because we've said these things for a long time, doesn't mean that we need to update how we think, and the place we do that is here in Parliament. Sorry for the long
Thank you
answer.
very much. That's your time. Alors, Madame Larouche, vous avez la parole.
Madame Larouche, you have the floor at 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Many statistics have been mentioned on the increase in femicides, but also it's part of our meeting too. I've seen on CBC that there's an increase in intimate partner violence among teenagers. They experience this more and more, or they are the authors of this more and more. So this does not help. We talked about the number of femicides in Canada and Quebec earlier. So just wanting to do this reflection with you before we look at your bill clause by clause. How are there offenses that are distinct? There's harassment, and to what extent are these behaviors already criminalized? There are several offenses that already exist in the criminal code to deal with domestic violence. Is the problem more the application or the enforcement of these laws rather than the absence of an offense? That's another good question.
That the issue is really twofold. When we introduce a provision, for instance, Madame LaRouche, like assault intimate partner as opposed to assault, that doesn't mean that there are going to be any less assaults. It just means we're calling it what it is, and we are describing to the community what it is. And there is a stigma that goes along with it, and frankly, there should be. You know, when you do assault your intimate partner, it is different than beating somebody up at the bar. It is different than getting into an argument with your neighbor. But even, I think the argument, though, is you know, when people say, well, why do you need that offense? It's quite easily rebutted. We've talked about assaults on healthcare workers. Well, that's already criminalized. There's actually a provision, assault peace officer. So we as a society have chosen to delineate that certain types of violence should have a different umbrella to recognize the harm done. Harm done to peace officers, harm done to frontline workers, harm done to healthcare and workers, and now harm done to intimate partners.
Thank you. And now we will go to Madame Vien, 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la...
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We're having very interesting conversations. Earlier, I was telling you that according to the Canada government sites, there are 200 women. So actually, there were 240 women murdered in 2024. That's a high number. So, Minister, just to understand the technical aspects or the philosophy of the law, in order for there to be a murder, there has to be intention to commit a crime. We talk about premeditation. It has to be deliberate. It has to be planned. in the way that you understand it, and the way in 225, the prosecutor doesn't still has a responsibility to prove this. Are we right to believe this?
Off my legal knowledge, but this is good. Yes, first-degree murder is committed. Most people think it's actually one way, and that's what's called. People call it premeditated. That's an American term in Canada. It's called planned and deliberate. What is planned and deliberate is not something I'm going to discuss here because, well, we're not an advanced criminal law lecture, but that's what the legal term is. There's actually another way. There are two other ways that come to mind that a person is guilty of first-degree murder, in which this is something that very few people, doesn't get discussed in the public. One is if you kill a peace officer. If you kill a police officer, even if it's not planned and deliberate, it is first-degree murder. And then the last way that somebody is liable for first-degree murder is if they kill somebody in the course of another offense. So sexual assault being one of them. So the first homicide I ever prosecuted was a young woman named Taylor Van Diest, and my condolences to her family. It was 2011. She was walking on railroad tracks in Armstrong, British Columbia, a small town. And I'm sure Mr. Anderson remembers. I don't even actually know if I ever told him that I prosecuted that case. The offender approached her. We don't know exactly what happened, but clearly he admitted he approached her for sex, and she said no. And violence in response to rejection of an offer is itself a sexual assault. So if you kill somebody in that context, can be first-degree murder if the judge or jury finds it that way. So there are a number of ways to get there, but the prosecutor still has to prove that somebody intended to kill, as in they had what we call specific intent. Murder generally, and I won't get into some of the other aspects of murder about recklessness, but murder, the difference between murder and manslaughter, those are the two offenses with respect to the homicides. I guess there's infanticide as well. But murder and manslaughter, the difference between them is only intent. That's it. In manslaughter, you don't intend to kill. In murder, you do.
Dans ce cas-ci,
So in this case, intention must be demonstrated. We're still in that same scenario. Yes, perfect. I think that will also reassure people who will be alarmed. Mr. Caputo, time is going by so quickly. You spoke with Madame Larouche a few minutes ago about dissuasion, disincentive. Are we convinced that with this bill there will be that effect? That it will decrease, that there will be a deterrence, that it will decrease violence against women in an intimate partnership?
To make such promises. If you want to decrease, I think you have to change the law, but you also have to change mentality. Sometimes the two go hand in hand. And the reason I say that is because we have to, as a society, wake up to the scourge of intimate partner violence. We have to realize that this happens all over the place, that this happens far more than we might like to think, might like to accept. Now, by addressing this through law, we are having that conversation to change the mentality, to start people talking about it at universities. Madame LaRouche talked about young people. Maybe it's time we start talking about this in high school. They didn't when I was in school. So the two of changing the law and deterring it also has an implication culturally as to how we have to make changes that, no, you don't beat your intimate partner, you respect them. And if you don't agree, well, there are ways to part ways. Thank you.
Excellent. And we will go to Mr. Chen for 5 minutes.
Madame la Présidente, MP Caputo, thank you for appearing before this committee and for bringing forward Bailey's Law. I would like to draw you on your experience as a former Crown prosecutor in cases of sexual assault. Bill C-16, the Protecting Victims Act, restores all mandatory minimum prison sentences that are currently inoperative because they have been found unconstitutional by the courts, most of which involve sexual assault and exploitation. As a parliamentarian, you have advocated for the government to add a safety valve to protect these mandatory minimums from charter scrutiny. And as recently as last year, you said that mandatory minimums have failed because all we needed was a safety valve. You have supported adding a safety valve to mandatory minimum sentences since 2021, and recently you said that this was all that was needed to fix past problems. So, MP Caputo, will you support the current part in Bill C-16 that restores mandatory minimum penalties while including a safety valve to ensure that they are charter compliant?
Well, I wish we were talking about Bailey's Law in that context. We are here to discuss Bill C-225. I'm happy to discuss how Bill C-16 interacts with Bill C-225. Safety valves have nothing to do with Bailey's Law, but because you asked, I'm happy to do it. But let's just be clear here. The safety valve issue, it's if I were to hold up Bailey's Law, there's no safety valve in Bill C-225 to the best of my recollection. You asked the question, I'm not going to run away from it. At the end of the day, yes. Legislation is struck down based on reasonable hypotheticals. Reasonable hypotheticals are things that could happen. A safety valve is meant to address them. Is the safety valve that is contained in Bill C-16 necessarily the appropriate safety valve? Well, I think that's oversimplifying. So just to say, well, you've said there should be a safety valve. Yeah, I have said that a ton of times. And you know what? The Liberals mocked me for it, if we want to get into that. I was mocked repeatedly about my beliefs on justice. Being told that there was no need for that type of thing was the tenor. So let's also get that on the record as well. Does there need to be a safety valve based on what the Supreme Court of Canada says? Yes. What that safety valve should entail, though, and MP Brock has made this point, is something that requires greater scrutiny. Again, doesn't have to deal with Bailey's Law, but happy to answer it.
Clause 7 of your bill, MP Caputo, regarding Section 490 of the Criminal Code. There has been significant work recently done on this section by the Uniform Law Conference of Canada Working Group, which conducted a 2-year study and issued 49 recommendations in July 2024. For example, they recommended extending the detention period from 3 to 6 months, rather than the 1-year period proposed in this bill, arguing that 3 to 6 months strikes a better balance between individual property and privacy rights and the public interest in effective law enforcement. Would you be open to amending this bill to follow the Uniform Laws Conference of Canada Working Group recommendations?
I've said it before, I'll say it again. I am open to any and all amendments. I would gladly consider a change to 6 months. Section 490 of the code is about seizure of goods. For those people who don't know, you actually have to, you being the police, have to go to court every 3 months that they have, like say they seize a cell phone. They have to go to court every 3 months the charges aren't laid to renew that seizure. So in rural BC, like I have Blue River in my riding, the police drive from Clearwater about an hour and a half there to just tell the person, that cell phone we seized from you, we still have it and we want to keep it. Hour and a half back, the person may not be there, they got to do it again and again, then they have to give notice of that application, then they have to reserve court time. It is the biggest time waster in British Columbia, according to police officers, and with technical digital evidence now, charges often aren't laid for a year to a year and a half. So police officers are literally making 4 trips in order to just hold on to something. I believe a year is reasonable, but I'm happy to talk about 6 months. Most of the time, the accused person doesn't actually take an interest in it, or their lawyer applies for it.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mr. Caputo. I'm going to suspend briefly while we switch to our second panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are in our second panel. Welcome to our witnesses. Just to let you know, if you have any trouble with the translation, just raise your hand and our tech support would be happy to help out. And let me just introduce everybody that we have. We have Debbie Henderson here today. Thank you so much. You've been at committee before, and we appreciate your courage always to testify here. And today we also have Florence Bellman and Paul Henderson. And we thank all of you for coming. Each of you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we'll go to a round of questions. You may have seen in the last session that when you get to have 1 minute left, I'll raise the yellow card, and when it's 30 seconds left, then I'll raise the red card and then gently move to the next question round. So we'll start with you, Ms. Henderson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you for giving our family the opportunity to be here to speak today about Bill C-225, Bailey's Law. Sorry, it's going to be a tough one today. Bailey was murdered in broad daylight in a parking lot with a hammer by her ex-husband. Just 3 hours earlier, he had been released from custody pending sentencing after being found guilty of assault and uttering threats against her and her girls. 3 hours. That's all the time that stood between a court finding him guilty and him carrying out violence that took Bailey's life. No one should have to go through life with the permanent image of their loved one and what they look like after they were beaten to death. Yet this is the reality our family faces every single day. Bailey was unrecognizable. Her face, her head, so swollen. Her eyes were completely swollen shut and were dark shades of black and blue. Her eyes were swollen to the point where you were almost worried they were going to be forced out of her eye sockets, which was not an unreasonable assumption, given her brain had herniated out of her skull where the hammer had penetrated it. There was blood on her face, her nose, and bubbling out of her mouth, and part of her lip appeared to be missing. The only definitive way to tell it was her was the tattoo on her arms. These images our family should never have had to see. These are memories that will never fade. Our family was handed a life sentence that day, one without the possibility of parole. And we're not the only family given a life sentence in our province in the last year and a half. Families like Tatiana and Vernon, Pamela's in Merritt, Laura's in Saanich are also serving a lifetime of grief through no fault of their own. These women mattered, their lives mattered, and their families matter. The perpetrators who committed these crimes made deliberate choices. They were once trusted partners, they once supported and loved and cared for these women, and these women at one point trusted and loved them. Yet these perpetrators still chose brutality. They chose violence. They chose to take mothers away from their children. Families should not be tormented like this. The system currently continues to extend the trauma and torment by forcing families to wait and see whether charges will be upgraded to first-degree murder. Our family had 4.5 months of stress and anxiety waiting for Bailey's murderer to have his charges upgraded to first degree. No family should have to live with the fear of wondering whether, after a conviction, if they'll be forced to face the person who cruelly stole their loved one at a parole hearing in 10 years. Given the severity and predictability of this type of violence, these murderers should be treated as what they truly are: intentional, targeted, and devastating acts. Killings in context of intimate partner violence should be classified as automatic first-degree murder, with the opportunity to apply for parole only after 25 years. We must also begin labeling violence as what it is. Assault against an intimate partner is not the same as a bar fight or an altercation with a stranger. It's part of a pattern, one rooted in control, fear, and escalating harm. assaults should be clearly identified as intimate partner assaults so that the justice system can properly recognize the heightened risk they carry. Language matters because recognition drives prevention. There must also be stronger safeguards at the point of release. Repeat offenders, especially those convicted of violence or threats against a partner, should not simply be released back into the community following police involvement. They should be required to appear before a judge and be properly assessed for risk, because when the system underestimates danger, families pay the price. There needs to be real accountability within the system that is meant to protect the vulnerable and prevent foreseeable tragedies. Bill C-225 represents an opportunity to close the gaps, to recognize the seriousness of intimate partner violence, and to prevent other families from experiencing this unimaginable loss. Bailey should still be here. Her children should still have their mother. Our family should not be learning how to live with her permanent absence. Let Bailey's legacy be one of protection, recognition, and action so that fewer families have to sit where we're sitting today. We cannot change what happened to Bailey, but together you have the power to change what happens next.
Well said. Thank you so much. And now, Ms. Bellman, you have 5 minutes. It's fine. And Mr. Henderson, if you want to go first, you have 5 minutes. Oh, or 6. I'm gracious today.
I just wanted to say that I wanted to say something before I read my testimony, if I could. Our hearts go out to all affected by the violence in BC and also what just happened in Quebec. It puts the reason why we all gathered today to another level of urgency, and change has to come. So it doesn't matter what party you're with, everybody should put their heads together and stop it. Thank you. I'm Paul Henderson with my wife Flo Bellman, our daughter Darian Henderson Bellman, who was murdered July 28, 2020. Flo and I would like to thank Frank Caputo for having this opportunity to be here to give our testimony on the tragic murder of our daughter. IPV has affected us in the worst possible way. This is a picture of our daughter Darian Henderson Bellman 3 weeks before she died. Darian was 25 years old and still living at home with us. Her murder that was so preventable if the catch and release portion of Bill C-75 didn't exist. C-75 should have worked for petty crimes only, not for criminals with serious offenses. It is difficult to sum up our daughter and her murder in 5 to 10 minutes, but we will do our best, and hopefully any of the committee's questions will shed more light on our tragedy. The alleged murderer out on bail multiple times on charges of illegal handguns, drugs, assault, and traffic violations, and was released on bail within days, several times with the same surety, each time breaching his terms of bail and reoffending. The last time in May 2020, he was arrested and was out on bail with an ankle bracelet and home arrest. On July 28, 2020, at approximately 2 p.m., he lured Darian to his home and was decided by the alleged murderer that her life should be over. He shot her 5 times. He then shot himself and was in a coma for a few months. He came out of the coma and now faces a first-degree murder charge. He applied for bail and was denied, and has remained in custody too little too late. After 2 attempts for a trial to take place each time, it was postponed by the defense. We now have a date set for the first-degree murder charge for September 21st, 2026. That's 6.5 years, 2 months since her murder. 6.5 years. Not only was Darian's life taken that day, but Flo and mine were taken as well. Our lives will never be the same again. A broken judicial system that is long overdue to be amended. It must happen to protect innocent people and children from becoming victims. It is so unfair that the scale of justice tends to lean towards the rights of the criminals prior to the victims. I had a conversation with our Crown. I told her for Flo and I, no matter what the Crown, defense, or witnesses say in court, our sentence was over on July 28, 2020, the day our daughter Darian was murdered. We'll never see her again. No words can express how we feel every day without her. We get up and each day carries an enormous amount of pain at different levels. To us, Bill C-75 catch and release section is just as guilty as her murderer. If the system had done what it truly should have done and he didn't get bail, Darian would still be with us today. She would still be here. After 2 months, about 2 months after Darian's murder, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I'm being treated with counseling and medication. It affects you in many ways I never knew existed. I would like to share something with all of you. If anyone in here has been also affected in the same way we have, we are sorry and our hearts go out to whoever it is. Flo and I had to sit through a preliminary hearing and listen in graphic detail from the pathology report to what every bullet did to our precious daughter who we love more than life itself. The vision, I imagine, is in my mind every night I try to sleep. No parent should ever be faced with that. Police forces who we deal with, Halton and Peel, are so frustrated about this broken system that also fails them. Everyone involved should all put their heads together and pass this bill 225 as an amendment to the criminal code. It will not bring our daughter Darian back. Sadly, she is gone. But it will keep other women and children from suffering the same fate as Darian did, and Flo and I will do everything we possibly can to protect others and make a difference. Flo and I sit before you all today with massive hope that politics can be put on hold long enough for everyone in the House to work together as elected MPs who have the power to fix this nationwide epidemic of IPV. And when you do, lives will be saved. Thank you. My wife, Flo, wants to speak.
Thank you so much, Courage. Ms. Bellman, 5 minutes.
I'm Flo Bellman, Paul's wife, and Darian Bellman Henderson's parent. As you have heard from Paul, the tragic story of our 25-year-old daughter, Darian. Due to the catch and release system, Darian and ourselves were deprived from any future together. Since our daughter was murdered, we have been advocating for change in a broken bail system and illegal gun laws to give some hope to ourselves and others, or other women and children and families do not fall victims to the broken system as we have done. Thank goodness we have had ongoing support from different sectors of the system, such as Peel Police, Halton Police, who are both suffering ongoing frustration and less job satisfaction with this catch and release system. In spite of the system, they are doing an amazing job, even though after their lives are put on the line, arresting these criminals, taking them to court, only to have them released on bail to repeat again what they were arrested for. victim services who also suffer the same letdowns and frustrations. Halton Women's Place suffering as other supporters are from the fallout of C5. In the past year, we have met and added to our list of help and supporters Pierre Poilievre, Conservative Party leader, Arpan Kahan, MP, Jail Not Bail Act, Frank Caputo, MP, Bill C-225, Bailey's Law for Bailey McCourt, Larry Brock, MP, and others. This has been an amazing to know, and we are not alone. Our frustration and disappointment, along with many Canadians, is the cruelty and loss of lives which were made worse by the catch and release system. Due to too many promises, too much talk, not enough action, the system is getting worse. Our extreme pain and sorrow due to our daughter's murder and the lives still suffering and still taken is due to the unwillingness to make changes and stop illegal guns and the catch and release system. In regions of Peel covering Brampton and Mississauga, where every day more than one woman is strangled, someone needs to take responsibility for these statistics and make it stop. As Canadians, we are doing the best we can to protect ourselves and our families, in our home, in our cars, on our streets, and in our malls. We personally have bars on our windows and cameras surrounding our house. In one way, we are fortunate in the fact we cannot afford a new car, so no one wants to steal ours. We live in fear. We all live in fear. We do not want to admit it, but Canada has become a lawless society and more like a third world country, and less like the country we have grown up in. None of us are any longer safe in any of the safe places we thought we had. We know the world is constantly changing, but that our country has become unacceptable. Changes must be made. Each day Paul and I wake up, it feels like July 28, 2020. Nothing in the broken system has changed, and the circumstances have become worse. We are now waiting for the trial date of September 21st, 2026. 6 years, and 2 months later, after the crime was committed, as several times over in the past 5 years, the trial date has been postponed. It is not a given that the date will even take place. What kind of system do we have? Thank you all for the privilege of being able to express our pain, sorrow, and frustration. Paul and I live our lives in hope for making changes to stop some of the suffering. I would like to close with a verse Paul found on the internet, which finally puts into words what we could not find words for. The death of a child. It's like losing your breath and never catching it again. It's a forever panic attack, feeling your heart dying as your soul screaming for them. And no matter what you try to do, you continue to lose your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. We're so sorry for your loss. We're going to begin our first round of questioning, and I'll start with Ms. Cody for 6 minutes.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I want to say thank you so much for coming here today and joining us. My deepest condolences to you and your family. My heart feels heavy knowing what your family has gone through, and it takes a lot of strength to be able to come here and share the experience that you have gone through. It's such a tragedy. At any time, if I ask a question you don't want to answer, please let me know, and I'll move on to the next question if you're not comfortable at all. Or if you, I'll just ask the question. I won't direct it at anyone directly. If you want to just give your answer if you feel comfortable. In what ways can this committee ensure that this bill honors not only Bailey's memory, but every woman has been murdered by her intimate partner. And so it creates meaningful, lasting protection.
And surmising through layman's terms what this means to us. I couldn't give you the sector, but it gives us a security of these people not getting out again and again to reoffend, to do the damage that they do, and they do it without conscience. And it will help towards that, to make the change that we're looking for, that these other women and children aren't going to suffer under as they have done in the past.
So in your journey of advocacy, what have you learned about the needs of other families that you feel this committee should understand?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
In your journey of advocacy in supporting others, what have you learned about the needs of other families that you feel this committee should understand?
We were in a couple of media meetings and were with other families suffering the same. And when we look at them now, 6 years later, in the same pain, but have learned other tools to help handle our pain, and we look at them and we see they're just raw. They don't know what day it is. They don't know what's going to happen next. And when they come to us, we can't even tell them it's a better world. You're going to be okay. There's going to be changes made, because our visit here is 5 years in the making. And those people that come to us have the same pain and struggle as Bailey's family, as Debbie does. And we can't tell them it's going to get better.
Well, so then I'll ask Debbie, if you could speak directly to other families currently facing similar fears, what message of hope or support would you share with them?
We're going to make change. There will be change. Our voices are not going anywhere until we see that change, and we will keep demanding. That's your guys' job, to make change that will actually protect Canadians, women, and children. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that that family had to go through that 5-6 years ago, and now we're sitting here today. Change should have happened a long time ago, and we're demanding it happen now. We don't want to have to talk to another family. We don't want to have to tell another family any advice that we may have. We shouldn't have to do that. We need to see change, and that's why we're here pushing for Bailey's Law.
I think it's more important that we hear from you instead of my questions. So I want to give you the floor to be able to share anything to this committee that you feel is important. So I'd like to give each one of you an opportunity to say something that you can put on record.
I feel pretty confident with this law. I know that we look at the victims specifically, like let's talk about the first-degree murder charges. Yeah, we hope for deterrence, but we also are victims as family members, and we want justice. Our lives stopped the day this happened, and we're handcuffed to the system. Like I said in my opening statement, this is a life sentence. There's no parole, and the system keeps drawing us in and in over and over again. For example, there was a court date today that I learned some information about because I'm here. I wasn't there, and it was upsetting. There's going to be another court date March 2nd. It's constant. Our life can't go on, and we can't heal because it's incessant, just with the court dates alone, let alone everything else you have to deal with. Bailey had children. That is going to be something that comes up constantly over their life. And when we look at the murder charges, yes, ours were upgraded to first degree, but other families don't get that. And we want to see that change because those family members are victims too.
Anything?
Yeah, I think for Flo and I have friends will say to me, I don't know how you deal with this, or how do you get through the day? And I think a lot of people think when the murder takes place, it's all over, but it's not. It's only the beginning. You know, we watched Darian suffer from somebody who got his claws into her, and she didn't know how to get out of it. and she would always tell us the truth when the timing was right. But I think she was afraid if she told me the truth immediately that I'd end up in Maplehurst. And the police warned me, we'll look after you. There's a lot of fathers running around in prison that, couldn't take what happened. But my answer to the guys that asked me about that, like, we're in the last stages of our life. The biggest part has already gone by. And I'm glad. I'm bloody glad that I don't have to live a long time and feel the way I do right now. I would not have wanted to have been 25 years old, and what's tearing the heart out of my chest, having to live my whole life that way, because it's not going to change. It is what it is. And that guy, I've seen the charges with this guy. But out of all the charges, I've never seen the charge of robbery. And he robbed Flo and I of a life with a beautiful girl who cared about people and was a helper. And when we said to her, we don't think this guy is really great. Our family, we don't swear, yell, scream, fight. We always, Flo's got logic. That's how she deals. And we all dealt the same way. And when we said to her, we're not really sure about this guy, and Darian said, Papa, he's had a tough life. Maybe I can help him. That's the kind of person people like that get their claws into, and she didn't know how to get out of it.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to Miss Nathan for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Before I begin, I want to say how truly sorry we are for your loss. This is not easy for you, and no matter how many years passes, the pain would never go away, and I understand that. And we recognize that being here, talking to us today about these issues may be incredibly difficult for you. And I thank you for that, for choosing to be here. We are deeply grateful for your strength and your willingness to share your perspective today. And like Cody was saying, anytime, please feel free to skip a question, or if you don't feel like answering, we understand. So my question would be on the Bailey's Law, which is Bill C-225 that's proposed. It proposes to create 5 new intimate partner violence specific offenses that mirror existing offenses such as the sexual assault, not the sexual assault, just the assault, uttering threats, criminal harassment, assault with a weapon or causing bodily harm, and aggravated assault. These are the 5 regular charges this is trying to mirror. Do you feel there are additional offenses that you think should be included in the IPV specific framework? Such as maybe, like I'll give you example, like maybe assault involving choking, suffocating, or strangulation, sexual assault, or stalking are some of the things that come to mind. Do you feel like they should also be included in this? Yeah, go ahead, Flora.
I guess our lack of knowledge when these things come up, when we read the papers as they are presented at each time, there's something new. We shouldn't assume that all falls under assault. But I guess that was my assumption. Our daughter suffered every one of those. But it seemed when police spoke to her and when things happened, and we didn't know till the last month of her life that anything was going on, and it had been going on for 3 years. We were suspicious. She was 25 years old. We waited for her to come to us. We left our doors open, and we would say, is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything we can help you? She lived at home. She never lived away from home. But assault, just to me, means all those things. I personally come from a previous abusive background. All those things happened to me, and I was totally convinced by the person that assaulted me that if I hadn't done all the things he told me not to, that wouldn't have happened. And I lived my previous life until I met Paul under those conditions. She was under those conditions. And as Frank Caputo mentioned, she was coerced by her partner continuously.
I think every crime he just talked about there should be dealt with. And I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to about it because I'm bitter. I'm really bitter. And I've often said that I'd be the wrong guy to pick for a jury for somebody who's done something like that. So don't ask me to do it. I'm just very serious about it. And changes have to come. And I don't have the answer for you. But if a person's going to commit that crime, like in our situation, to be arrested on gun charges and released 2 to 3 days later, it makes no sense to me. W5, do you ever watch W5? So they did a story on Darian's death, and actually, our daughter's death 5.5 years ago kick-started why we're all here today in Ontario. Because there was so much interest that the system had failed and it cost her life. And this is all documented, so I'm not making this up. So in May 2020, about 2.5 months before she died, we got a call from someone who said, "We have your daughter here. She's just been hit and run by a car." What? We fly over there and she's all scraped up and cut, and I had no idea. And all she would say was, it was a white car. It was him. He had breached, left Brampton, coerced her into the car, and when they came around the corner, she said, "Let me out now." He didn't. She punched him in the face as hard as she could hit him, threw the door open, went out while the car was going, and he backed up and hit her with it. So we're waiting for police and an ambulance to come. A white car comes around the corner, hits the curb, bounces up, and goes down and turns around and parks. So I said to Flo, "I'm going. This is too much of a coincidence." I got probably about 3 feet from the window, and it was so dark I could see a figure, but not who it was. To be truthful, I was going to kick the window in. And as I got closer, I thought, boy, if I'm wrong, I'm going to look pretty bad. And I backed off. I didn't turn my back. And I went back to Flo, and by that time, the car left. He was arrested after midnight during the night in Brampton, hit 2 cars while driving, high. And when I went to that window, there was a 9mm on the seat. And like Flo said, he would have shot me on the spot, probably. And, you know, when I look back now, I wish I had done it. I might have been able to have saved her life, you know? And so Avery Haynes, when the W5 did the story, they came to our house for about 8 or 9 hours. It was quite the thing. They were very thorough. And during the W5 story, she held up a picture of the gun I just told you about. And she said, through Freedom of Information, we're able to obtain a picture of this gun and also the interrogation report from Peel Police. When they questioned on the gun with the picture of the gun I just told you about, he said, "I'd have no problem using that on you guys." And Monday he was out. And it sticks with me so bad. And then, you know, May 2020, she died 28th of July. It wasn't long after that incident. And I've always felt that out of everything that's happened, threat to the people who protect us should have been enough to keep them in. and she'd still be
Thank
with
you.
us. And that's why I feel so bitter.
Thank you, sir. Madame Larouche, 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This committee meeting is not easy today. To hear your evidence is very troubling. I am the mother of a little girl myself. So, in spite of it all, you have the generous heart to offer your condolences to the people in Tumbler Ridge and in Kitigan Zibi, other children who died too early, as did your daughter. So, in terms of questions, you talked about coercive control. It's a type of behavior that's constant, that's repetitive. You mentioned it. So anyone who wants to answer. So the absence of a specific coercive control offense, does that weaken, in your opinion, the extent of this bill? Should that have been added, the criminalization of coercive control? And really feel comfortable, answer if you want to, and don't if you don't want to.
Again, in our naive thing that we leave a note on the table about something at home, it's an umbrella for a whole situation. We were naive in the beginning to understand what all these legislations were about. And today, my eyes were opened again when Frank Caputo talked about coercive behavior. It is such a strong thing. I am now programmed. I had 18 years of that. I'm programmed. It's in there. Paul and I don't suffer with it because he doesn't test that programming. But if I get off somewhere and somebody's verbally abusive, I find myself shrink and start to believe whatever they're telling me, that I must be at fault. I didn't know that would need a separate mention, but maybe it does. I just don't know that. And so I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, but I am qualified to say it's the major thing about all abuse. The coercive behavior is how they get you, how they hold you down, and how they brainwash you. And then you become reprogrammed.
I think that there was a previous bill that is dead in the water because there was an election, and I feel that that was a comprehensive bill that should be brought back to adequately deal with coercive control, but that's just my opinion.
Oui, tout à fait. Et c'est pour ça qu'on est revenu à la charge.
Yes, that's right, and that's why we're coming back to talk about this, and we hope there'll be measures soon. There are some in another bill, and it is very important, and you're talking about the bill that was dropped because of the last election in 28th of July 2020, and the trial will be September 6, 2026, and it continues to be delayed. Do you fear that because of the Jordan decision that person would not be subject to a trial, or that be aborted? So how should that be framed in terms of serious crimes?
In our position, and I'm so sorry I don't know the legal number, but the Crown Attorney has made them sign a waiver, and there's a number for it, but I don't know what it is. Frank might know what it is, but so it says that you cannot come back and say my rights were violated by not getting a speedy trial. So it's going to happen no matter what. And he signed 2 of them. And as the prosecution said, it's not our delay. They've been ready to go in the first year. and they keep going into court saying, we're ready to go, what's going on? And it's the other side that's stalled, so they can't come back and do that. That's what we worried about as well, so.
Under this specific one, they can't, but we understand how that is and does happen.
Donc, l'importance d'encadrer.
So the importance of framing, describing the Jordan decision consequences so that people who've made serious offenses can't get out of it, get out of being tried. You also talked about the police force in Peel and the fact that they were frustrated. What did you hear, and what other measures than what's in this bill could help the police services? What did you hear about that? What resources would these police services need?
Sunday night with Peel Police. I went all night, like a 12-hour shift. I talked to probably 150 policemen. Every one of them, their word is frustration. They feel that they put their rear ends on the line, arrest somebody, and that person's let out. And that was one of the main things I got from most of the police. And actually, when this guy had a bail hearing for us, we got a call from a 30-year veteran of Halton Police, and she said, if he is granted bail this week, I'm quitting my job, I'm done. I will not work anymore as a policeman. She said, I stand the chance of dying, and they're letting them go. So that's how they feel.
Thank you. Now we'll go to our second round of questions, and we'll begin with Madame Vien for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much to all three of you. And hello again, Debbie. It's not the first time that you've come to our committee. And Paul and Florence, thank you very much for being with us. It's very difficult even to hear you speak about this. I really can't imagine what it would be to live this experience, to lose a child, a loved one. I don't have so many questions. I have more comments. Florence, you gave us a statistic, 1 strangulation a day. You know that strangulation is a prelude. Many people have told us that when they appeared before the committee. It's a warning sign that something more serious might happen. So I'm glad you have mentioned that and emphasized that. You've also said that we now live in a country where there's there's a lawless country. And we're thinking, it could have been so easy to change things. For example, to have modified C5 with these mandatory minimum sentences that were cancelled, or C75 that you mentioned on conditional release that was much too easy. So we can understand it, as you said, Mr. Paul, that when it's light crimes, it's okay, but serious crimes, it's incomprehensible. And I can reassure you, and that's the only slightly partisan thing I'm saying. I have to assure that day after day we denounced this, we asked for changes. How do you see things evolving in the future? And I'll leave some time to my colleague Frank, who might want to speak also, to talk about the future, to go to the trial. Do you still have a hope that the system will be able to serve you well?
When the preliminary hearing was for 10 days, and I tried to sit through that as like a normal person, not being affected by what happened, and listen to all the evidence. Yeah, there's no doubt about what happened, but I also wanted to bring up that in Peel region, last 1 year, 12,400 intimate partner violence calls in 1 year. In Halton, where we live, it's been deemed an epidemic. So everything is so complicated, like what happens to the people. How do you curb 12,400 calls on intimate partner violence, you know? I don't know how we get the answers for all that. It's too much.
Madame, you know, there are two things I have to say. And how much time do I have, Madam Chair?
You have 1 minute and a half.
Thank you. We are all at this table parliamentarians, and then we have victims. As parliamentarians, and I felt this way, sometimes we got put, or sometimes we sit what I would call ivory towers, and we forget the reality of the laws we pass. We forget that there are real world consequences. I'm going to say this comment, and I say it with the greatest of respect. I'm so happy you have shared what you have shared. With that said, I'm not going to ask you about other bills before Parliament. I'm not going to ask you for your opinion on other bills before Parliament, and I would urge the people across the way to not do so. Asking about Bill C-16, anything like that, we're here for Bailey's Law. We want to talk about coercive control. We can chat about that and how it is contained in other legislation. I just thank you so much for getting me out of my tower, for sharing what you have to say about Bill C-225, for bravely coming here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Ms. Wynne for 5 minutes.
Hi there. I want to thank each of you for spending some time with us and just showing up with such bravery and courage and honesty. This is incredibly, incredibly hard, and I am so sorry for the loss that your families have experienced. It's truly it's horrific, and your being with us today allows us hopefully to find a good path forward. I want to. You know, one of the things I am reflecting on, having heard your experiences and the role the coercive control plays, I actually have seen it in this instance in my own family where a family member was given a female family member was given a pager by her boyfriend. She was a teenager at the time, and we knew that there was something wrong there because bad behavior was about controlling. He very specifically said to her, I want to know where you are and you need to be accountable to me. And so this is the reality that young women face, and we all need to be attuned to it. And so there is a lot of work that needs to happen so that we all can protect women and girls, not from boys and men who are, experiencing deep violence and showing up with violence, and that coercive control shows up in those ways. I know that it has felt like a long time since justice has come, and that our ability to change systems feels slow. But I do think it is important to think about the broader context. There is work that's happening from each of the provinces, many municipalities. You talked a little bit about Peel Region recognizing these challenges as really truly epidemic. I would love to have your reflections on what you would like to see us as government do to step up beyond, working alongside MP Caputo to make sure this legislation can move forward in a good way. But would love to hear your reflections on what it feels like for you to see us doing this work together.
I think at this point, intimate partner violence is such a complicated issue. There's so many facets to it. And currently, we're looking at Bill C-225. Frank was kind enough to add in the first-degree murder that our family had written about and specifically asked for. I do feel that this bill needs to be passed promptly, and that's one of the things that every time I watch the news and I see somebody else was murdered, I mentioned some already in my province, we're not doing anything fast enough. We can continue talking all day long, but we need something in place now. And I believe 225 is going to help with that. We're going to identify specifically intimate partner assault. Let's name it what it is. Let's stop throwing it under the rug and just calling it an assault. It's assault on an intimate partner. I think once we start using language that recognizes that, the system is going to start catching on, and hopefully it'll see, oh, okay, yeah, this is assault intimate partner. We need to take extra steps. Bailey was strangled. That's a 750% increase in likelihood of future homicide. She's dead. We need the system to start recognizing this. We need the judicial system to see that. And I love the idea that this, if you have a history and you're a police officer, you're passing this on to a judge. We need people making better choices out here, not letting people out. I do think that there's a time and a place to be talking more about what else can be done, specifically the coercive control. I am familiar with that bill that was put forward before. I do think that's very important to bring that back around, and a number of the other recommendations that came from this committee. But currently, we need something done, and we need something done now, and this is the bill.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. All three of you have sort of alluded to and talked a little bit about having seen strangulation, and that's been a bit of an indicator and a sign. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how we could address that through the legislation. What measures would signal that we are taking this seriously? Some of the evidence we've heard too is that there is work to do to make sure that police forces, et cetera, have the information, education to respond here. I wonder if you have any reflections on both the education piece, the training piece, and what we might do to make sure that those signals are really recognized as real threats.
40 years ago, I was strangled by my ex-husband. I was held up on a wall with his hand around my neck. When I went, I burnt his dinner, so said. Was a bit overcooked? Burnt? No. And even if it was, why was that such an awful thing? I'd get him something else. There was no replacing his anger with anything that resembled a calm, collect discussion. I went to my doctor. I had a very strange voice for about a week. My neck and head throbbing, and he said, "You'll be all right." And I left the doctor's office. And when I got home, I never once thought I didn't deserve that. That was 40 years ago. The women are still thinking the same thing. And when we talk about get something done and hurry up, we don't mean we're asking you to hurry from Wednesday to Friday. We've been screaming for this for years and years. Because nobody started doing anything about it until now, it looks like we want you to rush. And that's not how it is. We've been crying for help for years and years. And
Thank you.
It just isn't happening. We're not asking you to go against everything Canada stands for, but we need to make a change and make it stand for something different, because it's now off the scale. And
Definitely.
That's not fair to anybody young coming up. And as Paul and I said, we're closer to the end than the beginning. But we'll do this until the end comes, because somebody's got to fight for all these women and children that this is happening for.
Thank you so much. Madame Larouche, 2 minutes et demie.
You have 2.5 minutes, Madame Larouche. Thank you, Madam Chair. We're getting close to the end of this panel. I don't know if this will be the last questions you'll get, but the only question that I can ask during your discussions with the Peel Police Force, in terms of enforcement, if this bill were to be adopted, do they have the necessary resources to be able to enforce it? Is there something that could help them more? Because we can adopt a bill, but after it needs to be enforced. Do you have any suggestions about that concerning the Peel Police Force?
We were on a board for the Council of Peel to try and get a budget passed for more police. And at the rate crime has grown in Peel, their police force, number-wise, was so outdated for years that it fell behind. They needed a massive boost. They couldn't handle what was happening. People were dying or waiting at home after being abused, and nobody was going to their door. We spoke on council. The Mississauga mayor decided she was going to walk, so we couldn't talk. So they had to redo it. We went there. We did redo it. They did get the budget for 300 police and the money to build a second IPV unit in Mississauga, because the first one is in Brampton. After that happened, we were on the police board talking to them, and that was going to get them the amount of police to handle all of this with the change, if the change came. So we were very pleased about that. But what I don't know if anybody understands, you get the money for 300 more police, and with that, you don't get the first 300 coming out the academy. That's not how it works. You can say your budget will take 50 and your budget will take 50 and somebody else needs 20, somebody else needs 40. So there's 1,500 coming out every year, but they're all over Canada. That's not just for Ontario. So when they come out, they then have to hook up. They're a rookie. They've got to hook up with not a rookie. They've got to be taught. That takes another year. So there's nothing speedy about it, just like there isn't for all of you to get any bills passed. But if we don't jump on the bandwagon, there'll be no law whatsoever, because these police are out there drumming down all the criminals. And particularly on our case, the policeman went in and said, do not let this man out. He is a reoffender. And he was out on bail on the Monday. And what's worse about that is they don't have to pay for the bail. In 30 years, Chief Nish Duriapper of Brampton has never known anybody to pay for bail. So if you don't pay for bail, there's no consequence. Sure, I'll put up another $7,000 because you don't have to pay it anyway. So it's become a vicious circle over a long period of time.
Thank you so much. That's the end of our panel for tonight. I just want to thank you for your testimony. The committee is moved to a sense of urgency, I think, to get this bill passed. So thank you, and for speaking out, for being the voice for so many that have been victimized. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll suspend. Thanks.
Will you suspend or adjourn?
Oh, sorry. I'll adjourn.
Thank you.